And so what we do with the AI is if you're coming to an intersection that is lighted, we will recognize the pedestrian signal and tell you whether the walk or don't walk sign is on. And hence, of course, you can use it to make a more considered decision when you can cross the street.
Michiel Janssen, welcome to the See-Through podcast.
Hey, Lance, how are you?
Good. I just saw you in real life not too long ago. We met in the city here in Manhattan, in New York City, and you kind of gave me a demo of the app you're working on called OKO. And I wanted to bring you on the podcast so you could share what you shared with me to everyone who listens to this podcast, because I think you have such an amazing product. And not only do I want to talk to you about OKO, I want to talk to you about kind of the origins of where the app came from and how it's going to like develop an app. There's a lot we want to cover in this episode. So how about I pass the ball to you and you can give everyone a introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. Nice to have me on your podcast today. For everyone that don't know me, I'm Michiel Janssen, indeed. One of the founders of a company which is called AYES, which you spell AYES. And indeed, our company manufactures or develops, is maybe a better word, the OKO app. And originally, actually, I'm from Belgium. So I was born and raised in Belgium, in a beautiful town which is called Antwerp. So it's in the Dutch-speaking part.
Love your accent, by the way.
A lot of people always ask me, like, where are you from? And a lot of people actually say Canada, which is pretty weird. I wouldn't think I would sound Canadian, but hey. So we started off in the summer of 2021. So it's like 2.5 years ago now. And one of the main reasons why we started was we have a blind family friend back in Belgium named Kenny. And so he was basically telling me and my two other co-founders all his challenges while navigating cities or just navigating in general. And so myself and my two other co-founders were all computer scientists. So we graduated in a Master of Computer Science. Specifically then, we focused on AI, so artificial intelligence. And so we got together with the idea like, hey, if autonomous vehicles, take the example of like a Tesla, if they can drive autonomously on the highway using all these sensors like cameras, radar, LiDAR, whatever you want to use, if cars can drive autonomously 60 miles an hour on the highway, we were like, hey, if we take that technology and we can apply it to helping blind or low vision pedestrians navigate cities at like 2, 3, 4 miles an hour, maybe even faster if you have a guide dog. So that was like one of our key, basically initiatives and has led us to, basically starting our company, in 2021.
Yeah. So, OKO, what is it specifically? I know the answer. I have the app on my phone, but maybe give everyone kind of a little taste of what OKO offers.
Yeah, perfect. Maybe what I'll quickly do is I'll give some more context before I dive into the OKO app, because it's pretty important to understand like why we came up with what we're doing, of course, with the OKO app. So I mentioned our friend Kenny. He told us about all his challenges, and ultimately one of his main challenges was getting across the street. And so what that means is getting access to, here in the US, a walk or don't walk sign, and mostly outside the US, we call it a green or red pedestrian light. And so what fascinated us more so in a negative way was we came to the realization that a lot of pedestrian crossings are not accessible from a physical standpoint. That was firstly discovered, of course, in Belgium, and ultimately we found out that that was just a general trend all over the globe. And so that actually triggered us to come up with a solution that was more scalable, making basically every pedestrian signal accessible. And that ultimately has led to developing the OKO app. And so what OKO does is we use your smartphone camera, the back camera of your iPhone, and AI, and in very specific terms, it's computer vision. And so what we do with the AI is if you're coming to an intersection that is lighted, we will recognize the pedestrian signal and tell you whether the walk or don't walk sign is on. And so for a lot of people, like, it's maybe good to understand, like, what is a walk sign, what's a don't walk sign, because there's sometimes confusion. So a walk sign is literally a walk sign symbol. It's some sort of like white greenish color. And then you have the red hand to indicate the don't walk sign. And so that's basically what our technology is looking for in space, and then translates that visual information in three feedback mechanisms. So one is visual feedback. So the screen of your phone lights up a certain color. For example, the walk sign is a green overlay, and the don't walk sign is a red overlay. So it actually tries to resemble what is happening out there. And then, of course, the second, but probably third most important ones is auditory and vibration or haptic feedback. Of course, those two are mostly used by our users these days, which basically means that there's a distinct audio and vibration pattern that we play through your phone so that you know whenever you have the walk sign or whenever you have the don't walk sign. And hence, of course, you can use it to make a more considered decision when you can cross the street.
Yeah. And we met for coffee, but at the end of our meeting, we went outside and you gave me basically a demo on your phone. And we went to a crosswalk, and we were in a busy part in Midtown Manhattan. And it worked perfectly. It kind of took me seeing it for it to click. And I know a lot of people listening are probably imagining what it is that, we're describing right now or talking about. Yeah. So I'd recommend everyone just download the app because it's free. Just go to the App Store and type in OKO. It's very easy to set up. In fact, after me and you met up, I downloaded it on my way to lunch.
Yeah, that's so cool, man.
and I was messing around with it. And I had some fun with it. But, going back to the display and the sounds, and that you called it haptic.
Yeah,
that's a new something I've learned.
Or
haptic
vibration.
Is like vibration.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That's more the fancy word, I would say.
Yeah. But I honestly, even as someone with a lot of central vision, the sound and the haptic feedback, the vibrations, was my favorite part of it. Because the vibration on your phone, basically when you hold up your camera, you're looking at the crosswalk, and it'll basically tell you when you can and can't cross, as long as there's like an electronic, display, like, the white man or the, do not cross sign. Has to be electronic, right? That's a key component to this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's basically the LED lights for pedestrian signals. And indeed, it's like that walk symbol or that red orange hand to indicate which status the signal is on.
Yeah, so it would tell you when you can cross, and it would vibrate and play like a sound effect that kind of signaled like you're safe to cross. Mm-hmm. And then it would do the same thing if it's not safe to cross. It would have that flash of red, and it would also vibrate. Another thing too, once you start to cross, let's say you start to veer off the path in which you're crossing, because crosswalks are like a straight line. But let's say you start to veer off the path of that crosswalk because you can't see quite well where you're walking. Your phone will vibrate and kind of notify you that you're not really facing the crosswalk anymore. Can you talk about that, like all the little safety features you've built in?
Yeah, sure. That's indeed, I would say, a secondary and third thing to the app. Indeed, the main thing is telling people walk or don't walk is on, but I think the second thing is alignment, and then the third is more so veering off. Maybe talking a bit first about alignment, because that comes actually first when or before you're crossing the street. I think what's interesting to know is, like, if you're approaching an intersection as a blind or low vision individual, you're most of the time, of course, using a wide cane or a guide dog. And so as you approach an intersection, depending, of course, on where you live and where you're navigating to, there's always probably a certain key point or waypoint even that tells you that you are at the intersection. Like, it's the curb that you feel with your wide cane, or like that tactile or more fancy truncated domes that you feel on the ground. So for a lot of people, that moment is the time to open up the app and hold it at chest level, as you described. It's always important to hold it as close to your body, which is just more relaxing for your arm because you're holding it. And so basically the moment that the camera picks up the light, it will notify you through that audio or vibration. But for a lot of people, that also gives an extra sense of confirmation on where you're going to, because you can basically use our app and of course and the iPhone to rotate your body. And as you rotate your body, the phone also rotates at that same speed. And so basically you can also use it as an orientation tool to align yourself towards that crosswalk where indeed the pedestrian signal is located. And so that's, let's say, a first thing that some people do. I won't say all, of course. And if for example, then the walk sign comes on, it's a very fast beep, and there's also a voice saying walk signal. And so if you continue to hold your phone while crossing the street, it can actually help you stay in line, as you mentioned, Lance. So what happens is that the technology that we're using basically relies on line of sight, which means that the moment that you're veering off, the camera of your iPhone won't longer see that pedestrian signal across the street. And so that means that our AI can't see any pedestrian signal visibly in the camera that it's getting. And so that means then that the feedback automatically drops away. And so that sudden drop of feedback for a lot of people gives them the understanding like, hey, there's something going on. I might be veering to the left or to the right. And again, by doing that rotation of your body, using it again as an orientation tool and waiting for the feedback to come on again, that's for them a way to get back on track, let's say. And there's actually, it's a long time ago, a couple of months ago, with a cool organization in Milwaukee that reviewed our app, and they had a funny saying, which is, if you stop hearing, you're veering. And that's the thing, right? If there's no feedback coming, you're basically going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's such a helpful tool. And it's something that people, aren't really that conscious of, especially if you're not visually impaired, or using, a cane or a guide dog to get around from place to place. You might not think about how difficult it can be to cross the street.
Exactly. I think even here in New York, a lot of people might want to use it as well. I mean, everyone is always looking at his phone.
Yeah.
So it might be a bit even less dangerous for all of them to use our app.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. So yeah, I think you kind of built this product that helps solve this specific, very niche thing that needs to be people want help with. Does it help you know which street you're crossing to? Does the app let you know where you're headed? Right
now, it's mainly indeed focused on just telling you the walk and don't walk sign is on. But of course, there's a lot of cool stuff that we're working on where, like indeed what you just asked, like knowing where you're going or which street you're about to cross. That's basically indeed what the future vision and mission of our company is, or a part of it.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and AI has changed the game drastically. I just had a great conversation with the CTO from a company called Envision, and he was kind of giving me an update on how ChatGPT kind of changed everything and how, it's basically sped up artificial intelligence, but like what he thought was going to take 10 years has now already happened, basically. So it's exciting for me. It's kind of something that I'm personally interested in and invested in right now, is kind of like AI, and how it's going to help in regards to accessibility. So yeah, so that's, the main thing with OKO. Is there anything else you wanted to add about the app itself and what you can do with it?
As of today, I think what I mentioned is indeed the main capabilities. But as I mentioned, of course, and I want to maybe take some time to talk a bit more about like what's coming, of course. But before going there, I think ultimately to understand like what we're trying to solve is the fact that what we figured out a couple of years ago is that basically mobility is one of the bigger barriers to live an independent life. It's not only for blind and low vision pedestrians, but all types of disabilities experience inaccessible ways to reach certain things like work, going to your medical appointment, or whatever you're trying to do. And so that also reflects into the fact that a lot of people within our community aren't employed, which, I mean, we're trying to solve by solving one of that main challenges linked to it, which is mobility. And so ultimately what we're building is Waze for pedestrians, and Waze is a pretty popular app for cars, which I mean is being used by everyone here in the US and in Europe as well. And so in essence, what we're trying to do with the future of our OKO app is that we want to build that Waze for pedestrians. And what that means is that we want to focus on routing pedestrians in cities. If you think about a Google Maps, Apple Maps, even Waze, all these navigation apps are ultimately built for cars. And even more so here in the US, coming from Europe. I mean, the US is even a more car-centric country. So what we actually want to do is basically take a pedestrian focus in helping pedestrians navigate cities. And of course, with our focus on the blind and low vision community first, and ultimately scaling to other types of disabilities, and at some point, every pedestrian, basically. And so what that means is that we want to use current navigation techniques, which is basically GPS, but incorporate wherever possible AI. So imagine what we're actually working on here in New York in a closed beta group is combining GPS and our current OKO app, which means that if you put in your route to a certain destination, you'll get turn-by-turn navigation, like, I mean, any other app does. That's definitely not like trying to reinvent the wheel there, but we're like attaching certain key components to it. Like imagine that you're on your route. Let's say you need to cross 10 streets, of which 5 of them are signalized, and the other 5 are either stop sign control or something else. We want to be able to tell people what's going on at every intersection and what to expect as you approach them. And for example, if you come to an intersection that is signalized, we can automatically trigger then the camera and the AI that we've developed to tell you whenever the walk and don't walk sign is on. So in essence, we're trying to like combine both navigation and AI in a more seamless way, whereas people now just need to know that they're approaching a intersection that is signalized, take out the phone. And so that's one piece of the bigger puzzle. But ultimately, we just want to focus a lot of our attention to routing people through the most accessible and the most safe way. Again, if you think about an Apple Maps, a Google Maps, they don't really, or not at least from like bottom up, they don't think as much on accessibility as we would like to. And it's on all fronts. Like people in a wheelchair, for example, they want to know here in New York or anywhere else that they can get on and off the sidewalk with like a curb ramp, or visiting coffee shops like where we went to. You want to be able to know, like, do I have all the accommodations that I need so I can get there? And then, of course, do whatever service that you want to do. So for us, it's that mission that we want to basically achieve into helping people reach destinations more accessible, and at the same time also provide more accessibility information about businesses like coffee shops, bars, restaurants, all these venues. We want to preemptively like provide the information that no other application these days really offers you. So that's like two pieces, I think. And then the third one, which is then more a bit like what Waze does. The beauty about Waze is that it's so much community driven. A lot of people report certain things like traffic jams, construction, and all these things. And so that's also something that we want to do for our community, but more so again on the accessibility of it all. Imagine that you're walking in New York and you're bumping into with your white cane, for example, you're bumping into construction. For a lot of people, it's so confusing. They don't know what's going on, and it's hard for them to like find another way to, basically go around it. So we imagine that people or our OKO app will offer the ability to report these issues like construction on your route, and that information that is being used to basically tell others that might go that same route, that we're using that information to basically navigate you around it in advance, if you see what I mean. So that's I would say that the three main pillars that we're working on today, and it's pretty exciting actually.
It's very exciting. Yeah, it's very exciting. Yeah, I love the idea of, making a kind of a travel app, or directions app that's specific for pedestrians versus cars, and adding like the Waze features of being able to kind of signal that there's construction on this corner. On like the Waze app, if you're driving, if you're familiar with that, it'll kind of tell you where like bumps in the roads, or something's in the road, cops up there waiting, maybe it can tell you stuff like that too. It'll be like, cops up on the corner, watch out.
That would be cool.
Yeah. But it's very exciting, and that's like kind of direction you're heading, but you've already nailed and kind of got down the crosswalk thing, and that in itself is like super exciting and a helpful tool. I saw a video with James Rath, and I've interviewed him on the podcast, and I know he makes some content for OKO, but I saw him make a video about him using the app, and it was a great tutorial video. So maybe some people out there heard that, or they can find that and maybe get a little glimpse of it. If I can, I'll add a link in the episode description if you want to see that video. But yeah, I recommend downloading. It's super easy to download, super easy to set up. There's not much. You just kind of download it, go to the App Store. Is it available for both Droid and Apple?
No, yeah. So only on Apple, and I think it's always a question that comes on, right? Why aren't you on Android? I think somehow it's like twofold. For one, we're still a smaller company. We're a team of 7. Mm-hmm. But on the other side of things, if you think about Apple, they've been focusing since the iPhone 3GS. They actually launched a technology which is called VoiceOver, which enables blind and low vision people to basically control their iPhone. So the iPhone basically speaks to you, and you're using your finger as a cursor to your laptop or computer, for example. And so that ultimately, that's my opinion, has led to the fact that the majority of our community is on iOS or on iPhone. So that's one piece of the puzzle. But I think the other, and that's even more important, talking again a bit more about in-depth of AI. So the 3 things that our technology needs to have is an incredible amount of computational power, and a very good camera, and then also a very good battery. So those 3 things are pretty crucial to the functioning of our OKO app. And the reason why is that it's pretty unique, actually. There's not a lot of companies doing that, but we're doing our AI on your iPhone, which means that you don't need to rely on like a Wi-Fi or a cellular connection. And of course, in bigger cities like New York, that's a big plus. And of course, doing AI, which is very computational, doing that on the phone requires that insane access to amount of computational power. And so again, Apple, since the iPhone 10, I believe, they've actually developed or introduced a specific chip in your iPhone, which is called the neural engine. And so basically, and it's not only for us, of course, but it enables all developers to accelerate AI on device, which is pretty incredible if you compare it to, like, let's say, a standard Android in the market. And so for us, that value of running AI on the device means that there's instantaneous reaction on the recognition of a walk or don't walk sign, or the veering off aspect of it all. And so we don't want to compromise on that to just bring our app to the Android market and suddenly lose that value. So for us, it's pretty tough to make it work on Android. I know, of course, that like the more higher end Android phones are definitely going to work out. But then the trade-off needs to be made again. Android is already a minority. And then within the minority, higher end Android phones are probably also a minority. And the reason why a lot of Android people are on Android is given that it's more affordable. And so these higher end Android phones are almost as expensive as of the iPhone. So for us, as of yet, it didn't make sense to go there. But of course, we always have the aspiration as the company grows, the team grows, resources grow, that of course we'll be able to launch an Android version of it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot that goes into, developing an app that, the average person, like me, has no idea. I was going to ask you, because this is such like, you gave backstory, you have a friend who is low vision, and you kind of realize through your experiences with him that he struggles kind of getting around and knowing when to cross the streets. So you kind of had this light bulb moment of, well, I just went to school for, is it software engineering?
Yeah, software engineering, yeah. Or computer science, yeah.
Computer science. And you're like, well, I'll just make an app for it. And I was going to ask you, because you're young, you're 26 years old.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Actually, I turned 27 last week. So in between meeting you at Blank Street and then now I turned 27. Yeah. Thanks so much.
But yeah. 27. Happy birthday. 27's a fun year.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're young, man. You're young, and you have, seems like you have a really bright future, and you obviously have a very sharp head on your shoulders. I was going to ask you, like, what's it been like, going from nothing, starting with just an idea, to developing OKO in the state that it's in, and it being in such a niche kind of industry, your app is targeted to such a niche kind of audience. Mm-hmm. I always feel like sometimes accessible technology gets the short end of the stick because it is such a niche part of the community. Not as many people are going to want to download it as, let's say, like, a game or whatever that's just for anyone, or whatever app, just replace app, Instagram, whatever, mm-hmm. Something that everyone wants to use.
Yeah.
Has that been problematic at all? Like, how have you been able to work around that, or is it actually work to your advantage to kind of have such a niche industry?
Yeah, personally, I kind of like it to be in a niche, and I think more so, of course, on using AI, which myself and my two other co-founders were interested in for a while ago now. I think the beautiful thing is that we can have a significant impact on people's lives genuinely using AI, which I always value more than optimizing businesses using AI, which is also good, but I personally like it more to have an impact on people's lives. Because here in the US, for example, it just pops into my mind that there's quite a few people that told us already that they were previously in a car accident. So they were struck by a car or some vehicle while crossing the street whenever the don't walk sign was on. And so it really limits your independence and also just generally the confidence of going out and walking around, which is the most beautiful thing, right? Exploring places, that's everyone wants to do that. And so
100%.
For sure, I think one of the challenges that some people always say, like, it's a pretty small market and it's a niche, but I wouldn't necessarily agree. If you think about just global statistics, there's around 300 million blind and moderate to severe low vision people, which is, it's still a lot, although it's 2, 3, 4% of the total population, but it's still a lot of people that you can inspire to do more and to be more independent while walking outside. So I think it's pretty beautiful, and especially if you see where we're headed to, which is basically all people with a disability. For now, maybe more focused on like mobility disabilities, like people in wheelchairs and those kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And here in the US, for example, again, a bit of statistics: 1 out of 6 Americans identify themselves as having a certain mobility disability. So it's pretty huge, and trying to incorporate all these needs into one single app will be definitely challenging, and is already challenging, and that's just a thing. But for me personally, it's pretty motivational to really get them out there, live their fullest and most independent life, and basically give them all tools to do so. So yeah.
No, that's a great point. Yeah. Even though it is a niche, it's still a large amount of people in the world who, live with a visual impairment, or low vision, legally blind, whatever term you want to use. There's a huge community that, like you said, wants to be as independent as possible, wants to push themselves, and get from point A to B as easy as possible. I think that's something everyone wants.
Yeah, and I think what's also just pretty beautiful about being in a community is you ultimately see how strong the community, and definitely for us, we've been growing organically and word of mouth, and it's the same for all of other apps in our community. If something is good, a lot of people will just pretty easily recommend it to others. And I think that's also just a value that not a lot of other communities have, I believe.
Oh yeah, it's such a tight-knit community, and I think in a way it's kind of like you said, it is like, hey, once you download this, it's kind of like everyone's kind of helping each other out and trying to share tips, because I think the community knows how hard it is, to just kind of do daily task. So I think it's just a community that's hyper aware and is hyper willing to help others in similar situations, because they know how it feels and they know it's tough, and they want to just be of help and assistance.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's also cool here in the US, if I quickly just compare like from where I come from in Belgium, I mean, ultimately the US is way bigger, and I think that was also one of the main reasons why we came here. But also the fact that here,
because you started this company in Belgium.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, in Belgium. So
and then you recently moved over here, and you now live in New York City.
Yeah, yeah. Happy to be here. But yeah, we've been living here, or at least myself and my co-founder, we came to the US. The third one is still in Belgium. He's actually my brother, by the way. He's still in Belgium, but the two of us are here indeed in New York since September of last year. So it's been like 7 months. But I think what I wanted to mention as well is the US is pretty cool in a sense that the American Disability Act has been here for 33 years already. And so that's not much a big thing in Belgium nor in Europe. So for us, it was also a pretty big incentive to basically come to the US and make this a success story. For example, here in New York, the city got sued by certain blind organizations for inaccessible crosswalks. So again, that shows that accessibility is much more incorporated into society, I would say. And for us, of course, that led to being incentivized to join and immigrate here. Okay,
so it sounds like what you're from your basically research, you've kind of discovered that America, or let's say more specifically, larger cities in America, like New York City, have more of they make accessibility more a priority, and kind of have government regulations to kind of back it up, such as like the ADA. Another thing you mentioned to me when we met was that in Europe, the streets are a lot different, and kind of they vary, from country to country, whereas the States have more of a consistent kind of structure for crosswalks.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and that also actually leads to why OKO is not available worldwide. It's basically due to the fact that um, basically the pedestrian signals, so the LED signals here in the US, the walking man or the red hand, and so basically
my wife calls it the white man, because in New York it's the white. She's like, it's the white man. We can cross. But she's from London. I think it's a different color over there. I think it's green over there.
It's green. Yeah, and that's basically what I wanted to say. Like in a lot of other countries, like Europe, London, or UK, I think parts in Asia, and then Australia and New Zealand and stuff. Most of the time, it's more, or their pedestrian signal is a red man or person to indicate don't walk, and then a green person to indicate the walk sign. But it definitely varies from one country to another. And so that's ultimately a challenge for us, like trying to support our OKO app in other countries, given the fact that pedestrian signals might be different. And hence that the AI needs to first learn these signals before, of course, you can interpret these and then make use of it. So that's still an ongoing challenge, and keeps us from like just hitting a hit of a button, like unlocking all these countries. That's definitely something that we can't do, unfortunately.
Yeah. You got to work with, there's so much that goes into this stuff that no one thinks about, until you're like deep into it and you're like, all right, well, I haven't considered that, but all right, well, we figured this, and you kind of adapt as you go and kind of alter the app as you go.
It's a pretty funny story, actually. Now that I think about images and how we actually started our story, all the way back in Belgium for the AI, or we didn't have nothing. I mean, we didn't have anything. So we needed to ourselves like walk around in all these cities, and we actually also said to people traveling that we knew, like in Europe, like, hey, can you collect some images or videos while crossing the street? So we can basically train our AI to recognize walk and don't walk signs. So it's pretty funny. And we actually had an app all the way in the beginning, which was called Data Hero. In retrospect, not maybe the best naming, but it basically was an app where you could upload images or videos. And so we were basically relying on people willing to contribute and helping to basically build our product. And I think like half year into, we quit that app because we had enough data. And so right now, and that's way more better than we used to do, is like every time a person uses our app now these days in the US, for example, you can share images of the crosswalk that you just crossed. And so that basically what you're doing there is that you're helping us to build a better product for yourself, but everyone else that is using it in New York, Chicago, Detroit, or LA, wherever you are in the US. And so that's a beautiful thing, that we constantly collect the data and basically have that self-learning mechanism in place.
Dang, that's amazing. So what you're telling me is, just by using the app, you're also simultaneously providing and giving data that's going to help make the app function better for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you use the app to cross the street, it's kind of taking in that information, and now OKO is using that information to help better, even further, the app itself.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you even think about an image that was captured at the intersection, there's so much going on, and probably even more so here in New York. So all these images not only help us to maintain the walk, don't walk recognition, but also can expand or unlock other features like detection of crosswalks, like the zebra painted lines, or recognition of cars, pedestrians, or get insights into what's happening on the sidewalk. So that data ultimately contributes in our bigger vision or mission to have a data-driven approach where that enables or unlocks new features, or the data can be used to provide useful information to other people walking around, like what I mentioned with construction, for example. If that can be reported, it is beneficial to us, but also to the users that don't want to go there, for example. So data in itself is a big thing for our company, and I think a lot of companies in general that are doing AI. I think, yeah, your data is your gold. Let's say it's the most valuable thing that you can get.
Yeah, that's amazing. Another incentive to download the app, even if, you feel like you have enough vision to you don't really need it, but you could also download the app, try it out. And then through using it, you're helping provide data for people who do use the app every day. So that's it. That's another way to think about it.
Yeah, indeed. Even sighted people. I mean, everyone can start using our app if they want to. I mean, if they understand, like by doing so, you're helping the core users, let's say, cross streets.
Yeah, it kind of creates like a network of, I imagine like a picture of a U.S. map and like it like dots lighting up across the map and people using the phone. And it helps create this network of all the streets. And,
but it's funny that you mentioned, because I think we posted it on LinkedIn, and it will be going on our other social media as well. But 2 weeks ago, we passed an incredible milestone of 2 million streets crossed. So in fact, we actually used the map of the US, where there's indeed like all these dots lighting up in all these regions, what you just mentioned. That's basically cool to see, like where, and also in a timeline, of course, where people are like adopting our app and where they're using it. And indeed, you're building that network effect. And again, it builds up our knowledge of like certain data points that will be useful for future releases, of course.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Congratulations. 2 million streets crossed. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of streets crossed.
Yeah, indeed. And most of them, of course, are from here in the US, given, I mean, the majority of our users are here. So, and generally our main focus is here, and hence, of course, why we moved.
What about, is the app readily available, like easy to use in any other country outside the US, like maybe Canada or maybe the United Kingdom maybe? Is there certain countries that you would also say works just as well as it does here in the States?
We're actually only available in 4 countries. So the US, of course, and then you have Japan, Spain, and then Belgium. So those 4 are the only ones right now, of course. And again, same goes for like making more features or going through Android. Like the same is true for going to other countries. It just needs to have more time on our side to have more resources and more people to make it a thing.
Yeah, it's good to know. I'm trying to like get all the information for anyone listening that they want to know anything and everything about it. OKO. I'm just trying to drag it out of you.
Makes sense. I think what's also pretty
another
cool.
question.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think what popped into my mind, and it's been pretty recently that we've been doing it. We've been growing pretty significantly on TikTok. And what we're trying to do there is basically educate people and create awareness on certain topics in the blind and low vision community. So definitely, if you want to keep track on like what we're doing, or just generally learn more on certain fun and cool topics that you might not know, basically, you can always use that resource as well.
Oh, yeah. So, with that said, I'll put a link to your TikTok account in the episode description. So, go give OKO a follow on TikTok, Instagram, all social media. Do you have a YouTube channel?
We do, but we pretty recently started with it. So we're still very, very early days. I think TikTok and Instagram is one of the bigger ones, followed by Facebook. And then you have YouTube,
And I think that leads me to another question that maybe other people wonder about, or I personally wonder about. So the app is free. How do you provide like money to operate, to be functional? How do you have like money to kind of run a business if the app is free?
Yeah, good question. So basically right now, and again, that's part of our mission. We want to enable access to our app for free, because if you think about someone who is sighted, they don't pay to cross the street. I mean, it should be then free for blind or low vision people. And same is true for everything that we would build. But essentially, we raised money from venture capital. So we raised about $1 million in end of 2022. And so we continue to do that, raising funds from external investors. But ultimately, the idea is to work with businesses like B2B. And it's pretty broad. It could be somehow people that are interested in the data that we're collecting, or businesses like, I don't know, a coffee shop that you and I went to. Maybe they want to more accurately like target people with a disability by providing services like, hey, my coffee shop is wheelchair friendly. It has a menu that is friendly for blind and low vision. We support people that are deaf or hard of hearing. So trying to basically give tools to businesses and ultimately then let them access or provide their information to our users. So that's a beautiful ecosystem, I believe, to be in. But ultimately, it's a bit similar to like Google Maps, right? It's a free service. No one really thinks about like, hey, how do they make money? But they make billions of dollars of revenue. And most of them comes from working with businesses. So that's also our main focus right now, is focusing on user growth. So getting more people to use it, providing more value, providing more features, and in turn, getting more users to the platform. And then ultimately, whenever we have enough volume, let's say, it makes sense to turn on that monetization.
Yeah. I think I just wanted to bring that up because I think people, it's kind of a shame that, you know, these niches that, you know, we're a part of, even like my podcast has a niche, you know, I'm talking, you know, specifically about blindness and disabilities. So, you know, I'm kind of making my audience smaller versus if I had like a general topic of a podcast, let's say a sports podcast or politics or something of that. But, you know, when you make your business smaller, you know, even though, like you said, there's a huge community, you know, there's still, you know, 2 to 3% of the world, basically, you almost have access to as a customer who will use the app. It's still, you know, sometimes it can be hard, you know, people will assume like, oh, I love the idea of the OKO app, but, you know, I'm not, for some reason, they'll be like, but I don't need to support it at this point in time. Or I love the idea of the See-Through podcast, but I don't need to support it because they assume that it's going to thrive without their support. In the same way that other businesses thrive. But I think people forget that since it is a smaller niche, that you kind of have to be more supportive than you typically normally would to a typical business, because if you want to support you know independent apps or podcasts that are, or content creators, whatever it may be, clothing companies that are centered around disabilities and blindness, that your support is really honestly needed for these things to thrive. So I just want to encourage everyone to think about that. You know, if there's a business that they want to support, or an app or a content creator, that your support is needed more than you think. So just wanted to stand on a soapbox there and pitch that. Would you agree with or disagree with that?
No, yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think always, it's not that we're like just another app, right? I mean, I mean, if you would say like another game, or how do you basically differentiate and like convince people? And I think also that the fact that we provide actual value, that you can go out more frequently, more safely, I think for us, that's definitely a benefit in convincing people to support us. Of course, you always have early adopters, but eventually there's so much people that come onto the platform. And I think that's also what I saw differently from comparing again, maybe the US with Belgium. I think in Belgium, if there's like a new, and that's just general consensus from my understanding, is that if you launch, for example, a new product, there's always some sort of like skepticism. Like people tend to be skeptical at first, and they already have so many questions or complaints before like trying out a certain product, whether it's an app or something else. And so what I value from Americans, their mindset is so much more tech savvy. They're just like their mentality is like, hey, let's just give it a try. If it's something for me, great. If not, I'll just pass it along and I won't look at it anymore. So for me, that's, and definitely comparing again the two countries, it's much more motivational if your users are not like skeptical at first, but rather are like so motivating you to push the envelope and basically do much more.
100%. And that's good to know that Americans are more curious about trying apps. That's something I wouldn't have expected, but I believe you though.
That's to my opinion, of course, and to my experience, I would say.
Yeah. The last question I have for you today is going to be about, I know you have your friend in Belgium that kind of inspired you to, make the app. But outside of that, you've had to really dive into this blindness community. What has that been like? What have you learned about the blindness community since, launching the app? And because you tour around, you go to conventions, you're meeting with people, you're working with influencers. You've really thrown yourself into the community and have been really working hard to get this app out there, again, to spread that word of mouth. And I was just curious to know, like, if you had any epiphanies, about the blindness community, since throwing yourself into it.
Good question. Yeah, I think I definitely learned the most while being here in the US. Again, there's just generally more conferences, more specialists like orientation and mobility specialists, for example. I think personally and it's a bit linked to, of course, the OKO app, I think I've learned a lot about orientation and mobility, which I didn't know before. Like, how do you instruct a blind or a low vision pedestrian to use your cane? Or I was actually in New Jersey a couple of months ago at the Seeing Eye guide dog school, where I was also blindfolded and using a guide dog. So I immersed myself in what is it like to, or in that case, it was pitch black, of course, to basically walk around. And I also used our app right then and there. And for me, it was like an eye opener to use my app that we developed, like in a total different setting. But I think ultimately I learned the most about the community through orientation and mobility specialists, like how people navigate cities, how we should basically incorporate our app into those trainings, because those specialists are pretty valuable into basically creating the awareness, but at the same time also teaching people how to use it. So that's also pretty beautiful. And in general, there's a lot of things, and I think there's a lot of things that we definitely do through our social media. But like, for example, blindness is a spectrum. Like, a lot of people think blindness is like pitch black, but that's just not the thing. And I can go on and on all these things. And that's also due to why we try to at least create some awareness on our channels.
Perfectly said, man. Yeah, that's super smart of you to kind of dive into the world of orientation and mobility, since, it, like you said, it kind of has to fit into that world. If you're using a cane or guide dog and you're navigating a city, you're going to be using certain techniques to kind of get to where you're going. So you kind of have to know what those techniques are so you can understand where your app will fit in to that process.
Exactly. I think also in terms of like marketing, and also using the right words is also something that we figured out down the line. Like we always say, and that that was also true for the beginning, but we didn't have the words back then. But right now we say like, hey, it's an assistive technology. It's a tool in your toolbox, and it should complement your current O&M skills. And that's just something that we've learned from being part of the community, and more so by talking to O&Ms. And I think what we've seen in Europe, or probably generally everywhere, there's sometimes like companies saying that they are like changing, or no, they're developing a product that will lead to you not using or relying a white cane anymore, or a guide dog, which, I mean, if you say that in the US here to an O&M, they'll just freak out, and they'll just don't
that's
believe
impossible.
You. I mean, and that's something. I mean, it's not that we said it in the beginning, but just good to learn from those communities, and the only way is to be involved.
Definitely, yeah. And I think, there's some age-old tools like we talked about, like the white cane, the guide dog, Braille, those types of tools are always going to be around. Mm-hmm. And like you said, the OKO app can be another tool in your toolbox. You're going to have practical, tangible tools like like what you just discussed, the cane, but then you're going to have these digital tools, and all it's going to do is help, you get from point A to point B in a safer way, in a more efficient way. I'm excited to see all these products come out. I'm excited to learn about them firsthand from you, the creator. Again, I'm super impressed that, you just turned 27 and you're already doing so much. I'm excited to kind of follow OKO and to see what keeps going on and how it keeps developing. And again, I have a link to download the app. Again, it's free. It's easy to download, easy to set up, and give it a shot next time you're in the city and you have a crosswalk, a digital crosswalk display. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. You'll have kind of fun. It'll kind of feel like you're playing a video game or something when you're crossing the street.
Yeah, you could see it as that as well. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Michael, man, I'm thankful for your time.
Likewise.
And I think that wraps it up, man.
All right.
And where can people find you? I want to give you the opportunity to kind of, promote anything. I'll have links like website, social media, and all that. Is that the best places to find you?
Yeah, that would be the best indeed. Like our website, the main social media. I also think about LinkedIn. But yeah, I'll provide all the details and the links so you can put them in there.
Perfect, man. But that wraps it up. Take care, man. Have a great rest of your day.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Cheers.